A warm welcome. You're tuned into Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi. These are the top stories on the continent. Zimbabwe's new president faces criticism over the lineup for his new provisional cabinet as he names senior military figures and ministers from Robert Mugabe's era. December 1st is World AIDS Day, highlighting global efforts to combat the virus. We explore how Senegal's leading the fight against AIDS and ask the WHO what else needs to be done. And Rwanda hosts the International Festival of Contemporary Dance, with women taking the lead, this despite a series of cultural obstacles. But first to our top story. Zimbabwe's new president has come under fire this Friday for naming senior military figures and ministers from Robert Mugabe's era in his provisional cabinet. Well, critics claim that Emmerson Mnangagwa's line-up has dashed hopes of progress in the country. Many Zimbabweans saying they were hoping for a fresh start after 37 years of Mugabe. Solange Majan has this report.
When Emmerson Mnangagwa took the presidential oath of office last week, he promised a new destiny for Zimbabwe. Even if the former vice president was once the right-hand man of Robert Mugabe during much of his 37-year reign, Mnangagwa has managed to paint a picture of himself as a new hope for his country. His newly appointed cabinet may or may not be perceived as glowingly. Among the president's choices, there are old Mugabe holdovers. Patrick Chinamasa was Mugabe's finance minister, and he'll stay on in that role. While there are no members of the opposition, there are senior military officials. Mid-November, they were directing tanks in Harare to topple Mugabe. Now Air Marshal Parence Shiri is land minister. The head of the powerful Veterans Association is communications minister. And Sibusiso Moyo has been named foreign minister, 2 weeks after going on national television with the promise that this is not a coup.
We wish to make it abundantly clear that this is not a military takeover of government. What the Zimbabwe Defense Forces is doing is to pacify a degenerating political, social, and economic situation in our country.
Appointments of merit or thanks for service rendered? One thing is certain. The pressure is on Mnangagwa and his newly named cabinet, with an entire nation hoping that they will manage to reform and economically boost the country.
Next, December 1st is World AIDS Day, a day highlighting global efforts to combat HIV and AIDS. In West Africa, Senegal's leading the fight against the virus. France 24's Sarah Sacco sent us this report.
In Senegal, the fight against AIDS focuses mainly on mother-to-child transmission. For more than 10 years, prevention has been decentralized to health centers and clinics, like here at Gaspard Camara in the center of Dakar. Inside the clinic, the head midwife is examining a mum-to-be. The young woman announced she was HIV positive when she came in. She doesn't want to have her identity revealed. As is usual during all first consultations, the midwife will check her serological levels. Her diagnosis is quickly confirmed.
There's a first line and a second line, which means that you've tested positive. We're going to take care of you. You'll start by taking your medication.
The future mother will immediately be given an antiretroviral treatment, which is free in Senegal.
Our system works well. We have a multidisciplinary team here.
Thanks to integrated healthcare, the future mother will be treated like any other patient. Her child will also be followed by a doctor for 18 months after the birth. Since 2011, prevention efforts have reached out to people considered high risk.
We are field workers and we go in various areas where there's a high rate of drug use to meet users and do what we call field interventions in terms of risk reduction.
The prevention campaign is carried out in the streets of the capital, in specific areas where drug users can be found. Estimates put the number of injecting drug users at 1,300.
What kind of drugs do you use? Heroin. If the test results are positive, the patient will be brought in to see a doctor. Then the doctor will decide whether or not to prescribe antiretrovirals.
The field workers are part of the Centre for Integrated Management of Addictions in Dakar, the first such centre dedicated to drug users in West Africa. The centre offers injecting drug users methadone as part of a free heroin substitution programme. Screening and prevention is an important part of the centre's activity. To better combat HIV and other diseases, Senegal now has an Institute for Health Research, Epidemiological Surveillance and Training. The institute is located in Diamniadio, about 30 kilometres from Dakar. According to a recent UNAIDS report, more than 50% of West and Central Africans living with the virus don't know they've been infected.
Well, to talk more about this, Dr. Daniel Lobeer from the World Health Organization joins us on the line. Good to have you, Dr. Lobeer. Some positive steps in Senegal you would have heard in that report. In sub-Saharan Africa, though, HIV-positive men are less likely to know their HIV status than women. Why is that?
So on AIDS Day, the good news is we're celebrating over 20 million people on treatment. And to some extent, Africa is leading the way quite distinctively in development. You're as likely to get treatment if you're HIV positive in Africa as globally. But you're right, we're also highlighting some major gaps. The gaps in West Africa, where only 35% of people are receiving treatment, and high infection among young women, and a service gap among men who are less likely to go to health facilities, more likely to be part of key populations, and less than half of them are receiving treatment.
Now, according to studies out today, teenagers on the continent are particularly vulnerable in Africa.
So you're right, there's a high infection among young women. As you mentioned very well in your survey, each generation, every 5 years, is a new generation of adolescents coming into the epidemic, and we need to protect them. But what we're finding and highlighting in this report on the blind spot report is the gap in services among men, among young men, but also among older men, which can also expose younger women to HIV infection. So, there's a triple dividend in trying to close this gap, protecting the men, but also protecting their younger partners, the women, and their families. So there's clearly important gender dynamics that we need to engage with in fighting HIV. And in some of the regions where HIV is worse, we see very low levels of treatment among men. Only 25% of men in West and Central Africa. Senegal is one of the successful countries have access to treatment. And this is because they're not diagnosed. 20% fewer are diagnosed. They're less likely to go to a health facility. And also to an extent in key populations, and you mentioned it in your report, drug use, prison populations, clients of sex workers, you find men are often not reached in these populations and must not be left behind.
OK, Dr. Daniel Lobeer from the World Health Organization, thank you for speaking to France 24. Following a much-anticipated draw, the groups have been decided for next year's FIFA World Cup in Russia, and Africa teams now know who they're up against. Well, Morocco's Group B is the most difficult in terms of ranking positions, while in Group D, Nigeria will have Croatia and Argentina to contend with. Tunisia will face both England and Belgium. Egypt and Senegal's groups appear to be the most evenly spread. Football fans in Dakar, meanwhile, say they have high hopes for their team.
Semi-final or final, that's my guess. I'm not a marabout, but we should do that.
Colombia and Poland are really good teams. But if we're brave and we believe in ourselves, then we can do it.
Well, the 5 World Cup teams from Africa will get $500,000 each from the Confederation of African Football, who say the money is about strengthening and improving the technical supervision of each team. Rwanda is hosting the International Festival of Contemporary Dance, and this year women are taking the lead. While dance is rapidly evolving in Africa, it remains a predominantly male realm. Obstacles for women include early marriage and traditional perceptions that dance corrupts female virtue. Thais Brook and Duncan Woodside sent us this report from Kigali.
learning classic ballet moves. These dancers, 20 aspiring professionals, are under the tutelage of Wanjiru Kamuya.
It doesn't have to be perfect, yeah? But stay committed to what you're doing, yeah?
Wanjiru, a Kenyan choreographer, perfected her moves in the West. Almost half the pupils here are women. She's thrilled and surprised in equal measure.
In Europe and in the US, it's women who dominate the field. In Africa, it feels like the men dominate the performing world as a performer, as a dancer, and dominate the choreographic world.
These young people will put their skills to the test on Sunday at the close of the International Contemporary Dance Festival here in Kigali. This year, there's been a big push to get more women involved.
If you do traditional dance, at least there's a tradition, a custom. But if you do modern dance, like hip-hop or jazz or contemporary dance, it's a bit difficult. I can't say that the parents understand or accept it.
This evening, the festival is full. In a show called Rich Earth, a mix of theatre and contemporary African dance, Nadine Baboy looks at the exploitation of minerals in Democratic Republic of Congo. Originally Congolese, she lives in Belgium.
Given that I am a black dancer and also a female dancer, I faced a lot of obstacles when the other dancers, who are European or Caucasian, see doors open more easily.
The evening ends with the drums of Ngoma Shea. Listed by UNESCO, the UN's cultural organisation, the drum is a symbol of power traditionally reserved for men. These women are daring to break a taboo.
Your Africa team is back shortly. Up next, more international headlines. Stay tuned.